Joining me now from Washington is Muhammad Ali Abdallah, a senior advisor on U.S. affairs to the Libyan government of national accord. Thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it. You'll, of course, also be aware, though we haven't mentioned it so far, that Turkey's president actually spoke to Donald Trump and said that Turkey's engagement in Libya was viewed as generally positive by the President of the United States. So I have to ask you, where do you see potential U.S.-Turkey cooperation going in Libya? I mean, is the Trump administration going to be a reliable partner?
Good afternoon. Thank you again for having me. I think the partnership that the U.S. Is solidifying currently with Turkey and Libya is only one of several partnerships that the U.S. administration has sort of embarked upon to try to rectify and try to correct the mistakes that have developed based on the very passive and sometimes even enabling approach that they've had in the past with Khalifa Haftar and some of the countries that have been backing Khalifa Haftar. So I think that the relationship, what we see in the public is only the tip of the iceberg. I think there's actually a lot more going on that will surface eventually, or the outcome will surface eventually. I think one of the main ones is the collaboration from within the NATO umbrella from a security standpoint. One, to ensure that the Russian military presence, which is their ultimate goal in Libya, does not become a reality, and also to try to create an environment enabling a political solution to actually see the light. And one of the main prerequisites for that is to thwart the military threat led by Khalifa Haftar and backed by countries such as Russia, UAE, and France and others. So this is a prerequisite for driving toward a solution. The U.S.-Turkey partnership I think is one of the ideal scenarios for us as Libyans to see develop, and we hope that that partnership expands to include other friendly countries, neighboring countries, and countries who actually can be part of the solution.
Right. You know, it's fascinating to see as well this relationship between Turkey and Italy develop, because Italy's own EU neighbor, France, has very much been fighting in its own economic interest in Libya against the government of national accord and against really the arms embargo. I would assume you don't think France's position is sustainable as such now.
I don't think any country that has actually backed Khalifa Haftar in the past can sustain their position unless they have some very further evil objectives for their own countries. I think France made a huge mistake in their position in the past. They have their own justifications and they continue to express those. We're not too concerned about how they justify the mistake that they made. We're more concerned about how can they correct it. And I think operating from within a solidified, unified position within the EU and NATO is a start. But I think France has a lot more to do to prove their goodwill and their willingness to be a part of the solution moving forward. I think they definitely can, do a lot more in order to rectify their position. Italy has always, sort of been a very ambiguous position since the start of the attack. We're very happy to see a more clear position. Their assistance in removing mines, for example, is a very positive step, and we appreciate that. And we look forward to expanding this partnership between NATO member countries, including, led by Turkey and others, to help us start addressing many, many challenges that we have, including, prosecuting some of the criminals who are carrying out war crimes, addressing that within sanctions against countries and individuals who are backing Khalifa Haftar, and Russia is on top of that list. This has to be a unified position. And I think as Libyans, we will not be able to start talking about a viable, sustainable solution without having the backing of such countries.
Right. If you do get there, though, when you get that backing and it's clear the path that the GNA is on towards building a new Libya, where do you think that leaves Egypt, the UAE, and Russia, for that matter?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a one-size-fits-all or a broad brush that we can paint everyone with. I think everybody has a different objective, but I think the main parameter or the principle that we will use is how can these countries participate and add value to the stabilization of Libya and then ultimately to the prosperity of Libya. And I think Egypt has a huge role to play. We cannot see stability in Libya ultimately without having the buy-in of the Egyptian government. Now, will the Egyptian government correct their position and change their behavior in order to achieve that? That's a question they have to answer. Other countries such as UAE, Libyans are not in need for the UAE. As a matter of fact, we're in need for them to disappear from Libya and to back off of Libya. And I think the only thing we will need from them going forward is how can we impose the rule of law and hold them accountable for the crimes that they've done and have them pay for these crimes going forward, because this is the only way that we can ensure that other countries won't go down that path again.
Right.
These countries have to be held accountable.
It's interesting that you say Libya was never in need of the UAE because they were so indicative of how the Libyan conflict developed. This was indeed a proxy war with too many foreign powers really fighting for their own interests in the country. Do you think Libya is now finally on the path to stop being that proxy war for so many foreign powers?
We're not naive enough to think that we are there yet. We're on the right path. There are some tangible steps that we are, seeing, and that's being quite honestly led by our heroes on the ground who are fighting for this. The front lines is what's dictating this reality. Pushing back Khalifa Haftar and burying his dream of ultimately becoming the new dictator of Libya, that's what's put us in a position to be able to have these discussions. So we have to, call things as they are. That's the first point. The other thing is, unfortunately, countries such as UAE, who had an opportunity to play a positive role and decided to completely ignore the ambitions of the Libyan people and completely ignore how they can be of a positive value add. And unfortunately, they will have to reap what they sow. And that's a very unfortunate tale to see about a fellow Arab Muslim country. But unfortunately, we're not going to accept to be a sort of a testing lab for countries who want to carry out their own ambitions or try to settle scores with other countries or other groups on our soil at the cost of Libyan lives. That is not something we will accept from UAE or from anyone.
Okay. Muhammad Ali Abdallah, thank you so much for joining us there from Washington. We appreciate it.